Good evening, welcome to A Foreigner in the Philippines. Not really a late night job, but I guess it would count as that because 8:20 and for a change, and I should really touch wood when I say this, the dogs are quiet. Usually I think that there is a dog internal camera in here, and the moment that I turn the camera on, their camera tells them to start howling like banshees and God knows what else. Well, anyway, I better speed up and take my my gift while I still have it, and not look a gift dog in the mouth. So I was thinking about money. Don't we all? Now here's the thing. It seems to me that if you don't think about money, you will end, or if you set out as saying, I'm not going to think about money, it's not important, you end up thinking about it more than you would normally have thought about it if you'd agreed not to think about it. Let me explain, if I can, for myself. Money is a strange thing, isn't it? Because it's one of those things that people like to have a lot of money, and the richest people in the world are so rich that they will never be able to spend all of that money. Now for me, as soon as I get, well, if I get an increase in my income, and I feel like going out, I might go out and buy myself a pair of shoes or something. Or I guess if I was really flush, I might go out and buy myself a totally impractical car. Us aged gentlemen do that, you know. We have these what are commonly and derogatorily discussed as being second childhood, and we go out and we do silly things. Well, actually, this didn't happen to me when I grew older, because I used to do silly things even before I was old. It just seems to be one of those things that I do. Now, I found that I thought less about money when I started to not care about money. Now, right now, all right, in many ways, I enjoy a blessed or charmed life. I'm married to a lovely lady who, against all odds and a bad prescription on her glasses, loves me back. I have an extended family who are so very good to me, and who I take joy in helping. And I do a job, yes, actually I do a job. I do a job which is not just my Sunday driving job, but I do a job where I try to help people who are less, and this is not a promotional video, okay? That's just in passing, describing or giving you my job description. We actually enjoy giving help to people, and often, especially lately, since we have had our hands and feet manacled, more and more we give away our own money. Here's the funny thing. Normally when you think about giving away money, you think about being deprived. Well, you would, wouldn't you? Unless you have unlimited funds, then if you give away some of that money, it means that you will do without yourself. I remember when I was in Florida, and I had just filed bankruptcy, or was about to. That's when the proverbial SHIT had hit the fan, and everybody, well, it seemed like everybody, to me, everybody, or many were losing their houses, their wives, their girlfriends, everything else. Their cars, repossession, walking away from heavy debts. All of that was all going on. And I remember that money was scarce. Well, that meant that I didn't actually have any because if I didn't have any in the bank, I couldn't go and lay my hands on any. But those people who were quite well off held on to their money. And I remember I was playing in a band, and ironically I was playing for very little. I think it was I was playing for $50. We got $50. We got $50 for playing in front of a crowd of people, an audience of people that lived in a gated community that was very, very well blessed with very, very rich people. So I was playing for less than I'd ever played in my life, compared to the economy, that is. And I was doing it for people who would tip a waiter more than I was being paid for my skills, my talents, my musical ability. So after a while I pointed out, well, wait a minute, this is not so good to me. And all of the rest of the band all fell into that particular category where they were either snowbirds or were retired and well taken care of financially in the Philippines. I'm sorry, in Florida. So I put it, well, if I could be paid more, well, the head of the band, he had it put to him by another musician that I used to give lessons to, and saying, look, Terence is going through a real hard time at the moment, and I thought that maybe if each of us gave $10 out of what we earn, so we'd take $40 instead of $50, and that would give him a bit of a help up. And the band leader said, absolutely not. Wouldn't even hear of it. So after that, very soon after that, I thought, well, $50, it's not worth it. So I left. Now that was at a time, as I say, when all of the doodah was hitting the fan and people were in terrible trouble. Now the council, or the city, the transport department said, well, we're struggling here, so what we're going to do is double the required amount for registering your car. So whatever you were paying, they just simply doubled it. And the only thing that they were willing to give was the fact that if you took 2 years instead of 1, if you registered your car for 2 years rather than 1, then they would give it to you at the old rate. So unilaterally they just, that's it, and hit everybody who had a car. And let's face it, you can't do without a car when you're in America, generally speaking, unless you live perhaps in New York City, where they have a subway and you're doing okay. Well, that was one area of the economy that was taken care of. Now, what happened with the rest? Well, what happened was that people who were actually struggling to pay their mortgage, and then suddenly this financial disaster hit. It was a financial tsunami, and it swept over the lives of many, many people. So there were people like me who simply went under. I had some really good work that I was doing for a company in Chicago, and that kind of dried up. So eventually everybody loses everything, and then they find a new way of living, if they're lucky. So for me, I moved into a warehouse, which I made it okay. It was fine. A very kind man who owned the warehouse, which doubled as a kind of art gallery, an eccentric man. Well, he must have been. He agreed to let me live there for nothing. How eccentric can you be? Well, I agreed that I should pay something. And what I did was I paid an abysmally small amount to him, but I did work in the property, and I installed a kitchen that was donated by a friend of mine who was also renting some part of that same warehouse. So he cut a break on this kitchen that he had that he was never going to use because the apartment that he was about to install it into was repossessed. So money became of really big importance to me because I ended up thinking about it all the time, but I did learn how to worry my way through it. And when I came, and it seems like I'm taking a long time to get there, but when I came to the Philippines, I did, truthfully, I had a little more than $2,000. I sold everything that I had and gave away everything that I could. I sold, and everything else I gave away. So I tried to give it to people that I cared about, but in the end it was even difficult to give stuff away, I found. Well, I came out with that amount of money, and I stayed with my son, my youngest son, the one who got married recently, and I stayed there for it may have been 3 months, and during that time I learned to relax. Now, obviously I didn't have any outgoings, so the money that I had stayed that way, and that was when I started to give away what I had. And somebody came to me, made themselves known, and they had a little girl that had a broken leg and needed one of that special metal in the form of pins which must go into the leg to pin the bones together. And so I gave some of my money away, but I was still okay because every month I was getting my pension or pensions, and life was pretty good actually. I didn't really care, didn't really have any cares about money. I lived very modestly, had a haircut when I wanted to for $1, went round and ate at the local Candelaria. Candelaria is a very basic restaurant, kind of like a working man's cafe, and they're all over the Philippines. So if you're not bothered by what kind of water they're using to to cook in, then you're okay. And I seem to have found one that wasn't too bad. So I had my laundry done for very little. I took it round there. That was the biggest chore I had, was to wrap it up and take it round there. And then finally, this little Volkswagen that I found was finished, and I even had a little Volkswagen Beetle to beetle around in. When I finally moved over to Cebu, and I did that on a pure impulse, I did it on an impulse. Just thought, that sounds pretty good. Don't know why. And I spoke to someone and said, oh, I love Cebu. There's so many places that you can go to from Cebu, all kinds of different islands and everything. Oh, it just made it sound wonderful. So I took a flight to Cebu, and I stayed there for 5 days. Now, during that time, I was fortunate enough to be hooked up with, put in contact, started texting with my future wife, Beth. And it looked like it was all going to slip away, and then we decided that we just had to meet the night before I was going. And maybe what motivated Beth to take a taxi across town was the fact that there'd been a severe earthquake that day, and the aftershocks were coming. So we talked, and we rushed out. Every 10 minutes or so. That's how fast the aftershocks seemed to be coming. And we talked the whole night, and in the morning we said we shouldn't see anybody else. So we didn't. We kept that agreement between us, and finally, within, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, we got married. So that may answer a few questions. I've digressed as usual. That may answer a few questions for someone who wants to know how we met. We met in an earthquake, and yes, the earth moved for me, and I think for her too. So the money thing only really began to emerge as the root of all confusion. Later we moved to Bohol. We moved to Bohol, and then we were doing okay intermittently, and at other times it was tough. We decided that we would, this is after we had gone through a hiccup on my American pension. They stopped it because I didn't get a letter which was supposed to say, yes, I'm alive, please continue to send my pension. I didn't get that letter, so I couldn't acknowledge it, so they cut it off. When you get back in touch, they say, okay, just wait around for a couple of months or 3 months and we'll get it back to you. So big of them. If you have that kind of problem with the UK, and I'm not being biased here, it just happens to be true, I found that if I had a query with the UK, like I asked them if they would send my pension to my BDO account, they said, sure, send us the details and confirm it, so tell us on the phone and then confirm it so that we have it in writing. I did that, and it was done. And now I get my pittance of a UK. I always say that. Somebody actually took offence at that and said, why do you always keep putting down your pension? It's a joke. So they organised that, and so I didn't have to worry about that. And we got over the other thing with the US, and we settled down into a life in the hills. And we needed transport that walked down and walked back again 2 miles each way, a rough 2 miles. And we actually decided we'd buy a motorcycle, and we bought a motorcycle, mustered up a deposit, and we bought a motorcycle over 6 months, which was a killer because it was a large amount. I think it was something like 11,000 pesos, and that put a strain on things. And we're not ashamed to say that Beth's wedding ring used to go in if we were really in trouble. The kind of trouble that you get here in the Philippines, which perhaps you don't get anywhere else. You might get onto the motorcycle with enough gas to get there. Yes, it can be that bad sometimes. You got enough gas to get into Taliban, but not enough to get back. But hey, you don't need the gas to get back, because once you get there, you can go to the Great God ATM, do your homage, and you will get the money that belongs to you. Except that often we would do this on a hope and a prayer and find that the ATM was not working. So our last resort was off with the ring and into Palawan pawn shop, and we'd get enough to get home, feed us for a day or two, or feed all of us for a day or two, and then we'd go back and the ATM, the Great God ATM, would be up and running again. When we started to do our channel, that was when things changed, and it changed in a way that was really unusual. And for those people who are looking to find out how you can earn a living, or how you can make some kind of money, a YouTube channel is a way that you can do it, as long as you hit on something which I don't know, ignites people's interest in what you're doing. so that they come back and they subscribe, and after a while there's a whole system that you go through, a process, and after you make so many likes, you make so many subscribers, and there's, I believe it's called a logarithm. Sounds like a disco dance, doesn't it? There's a certain thing that clicks in, and there's a computer there. Of course, we're all governed by computers now, aren't we? And that would say, wait a minute, this little jumped up channel seems to be going somewhere, and so you gradually start to earn a little money. Well, for us, it went on, and we were caught in one of those glitches where you keep going to try to put something right. So you need, in our case, we needed a PIN number. Sounds easy, doesn't it? You go on there, you type in your name, your account number, your age, how many times you went to the toilet this morning, and important stuff like that. And it then asks you other questions. Well, one of the questions was, what's your PIN number? Well, actually, and of course you can't say actually, because you're not actually talking to anybody. So here we are, we need a PIN number, and the only thing that's stopping us from getting a PIN number is our complete inability to quote our PIN number. Isn't the computer a wonderful thing? I don't know how we ever got over that. Somehow we got over that. And if my memory serves me right, which would be a terrible shot in the dark to assume that my memory would ever serve me right, after about 3 or 4 months, they finally paid us. And they paid us all the back money, that what we had earned, and it had been, strangely enough, it had been growing against all odds. When we sat down and said, shall we do one of those YouTube things? What would we film? Well, it was out of the question that we would film white beaches and five-star resorts and pina coladas and 2,000 or 3,000 pesos a room, because at that time we were still occasionally pawning the wedding ring. So that was out. So we said, well, why don't we just do our simple little life here? As Beth often says, our little mind and little brain thought that this was something that other people might enjoy seeing. Well, they did, and strangely it took off, and it was a steep learning curve for us, well, for Beth mainly. I know how to talk, I know how to perform, I've done it all my life, I've been a musician all my life. I'm not afraid of speaking or singing in front of a microphone. That's how you get heard. And Beth knew about the computer, so we were a good team. Always, right from the start, it was always an equal partnership. And they do it very well, less so nowadays do you get the Filipina being just eye candy. There are several excellent vlogs now in which the Filipina is very much a good, big, equal part. I always quote this one because it just seems to me to be, and I call them the superstars of YouTube, and that is the Ahern family, and I always say that they do it so well, and it's an equal partnership. And Beth and I had the same thing, where we were equal. So gradually we started to earn a little money, and it was enough that because we were so busy doing things that we enjoyed, we never escalated our spending with our earning. And I think that this is a very important part. If your need for money rises at the same rate as your ability to earn the money, and that is a formula that's recognized by some people as being valid, and that is that necessity will generate income. So if you move into an apartment that is 10,000 pesos or 10,000 carats or 10,000 anything, you're going to have to get out there and earn 10,000 plus or 20,000 plus. We never did that. So the money just kept on going, and we saved. We saved everything. Now here's what I've been trying to get to, and that is that we stopped thinking about money. We didn't have to pawn the wedding ring again, which was a good thing. But what we did was we lived a slightly different life. The only thing that we did, which was out of the question before, is we ate out. Now that was a real big spender, because we've always had very, very expensive tastes in restaurants, and you can have expensive tastes in restaurants in Taliban, and sometimes we would spend as much as $4 or $5 on a meal. Hey, we're party goers, I tell you, and that was what we did. And very often when we took the kids out with us, we'd take Bibi and Taliklik, and we'd go out and we'd eat at that corner place at the crossroads, what we call the crossroads, outside Taliban. And we'd have a meal for 4 of us, and I think it was like about $5. So no, we never worried about money anymore, because we did not increase the level at which we lived. And gradually we were able to get money together. So now we definitely didn't. And it's funny, Beth said once, before I started to have money that we'd saved and worked damn hard for, by the way, before that, I used to think, I would love to be able to go out and buy a computer, or buy a necklace, or buy a new pair of jeans or shoes. Really, shoes and jeans, really big stuff, this. So she said, and now I can. And I realized the other day, I could have a phone if I wanted one. If I wanted a new phone, I could buy one. But I just don't do it. Now this is from a girl who, when we first met, I used to give her, say, 1,000 pesos, and I'd say, Beth, with my masterly sarcasm, Beth, don't treat this money as a challenge to see how quickly you can get rid of it. As I say, I've learned differently since then. So now, it's not that we earn colossal amounts, because if we look at it as if it were in the US, we would probably, between us, be scrambling to make minimum wage. But because a dollar is worth 51, $1 to 51 pesos, it's kind of good. Now, somebody once accused me, said, "You're running away." Oh, damn right I am. I never made a secret of that. I'm running away. I'm running away to where I want to be, which is here. So I'm very lucky. I'm one of those people who looks up at the airliner that I see, the aircraft traveling far overhead and going to some place, and I don't think I wish I was on it, because I'm where I am meant to be. So now, because I stopped thinking about money, and because I didn't overspend what I earn, because I didn't seek to have things that I didn't really need, I don't have to worry about money. Now, does that mean that we go out and have everything we want? No, it's quite the opposite. As Beth said, we could go out and do this, and we don't. So, when did things from this of living extremely modestly still and doing something that we loved, when did that change? Well, it changed, and I'm already way over my limit on how long I should talk as far as Beth is concerned. It changed when we were concentrating more on helping others than helping ourselves, and that was the case. Because of that, other people started to ask the question, can we send you something? What do you want? That was the most difficult question that we ever had to. We were shocked. In fact, I think a friend that we had made through the channel, Bill, in I think New York, was the first to ask that. What do you want? What do you want? What can we do for you? Later, many other people said, you know, we would like to do something for you. And then somebody sent us $50 or something and said to me, go out and take Beth out for dinner, a nice dinner or something. And we started to have things like that. And then later a friend of ours suggested you should have a Patreon account. And that brought in some more money. Now, for the Patreon account, it's a wonderful thing for us because before we used to get pleas for help that we couldn't really do very much of without taking food off the table for ourselves. But now that Patreon account is a lifesaver for us and for others, because we can actually help right off the bat, in spite of this little problem that we're going through at the moment of waiting for the paperwork for our non-stock, non-profit application of status to be approved. So, I've meandered enough. I'm probably speaking to an empty screen at the moment. Isn't that the way? So, thanks for looking in. This is A Foreigner in the Philippines, a late night meandering. I've been going on for too long, but then there's nothing new in that. Thank you for listening. If you are in a situation where you're worried about money, here's a tip. The worrying never earns any money. So, hey, get on with what you can do, and the rest will still be there tomorrow. Richard Bach said the most unspiritual, unmotivational thing ever. He said, no problem is so big that you can't run away from it. I like that. The other quote I like, which I always think, is the impossibility that Buzz Lightyear said in Toy Story. He was an astronaut with wings that couldn't fly, and he said, to infinity and beyond. So here's my toast to you, to infinity and beyond. Thanks for being with me. Bye for now.